This is an exciting day for us. We're launching into really this whole building campaign. We've been on this for a while. We launched with this theme called Find It, and I'll explain more about that in just a moment. We are so excited about where we are as a church right now, as Life Church. We want to help people find it, and I'll tell you about finding it more in just a minute. People are looking for it. You know what they're looking for? They're looking for hope. They're looking for peace. They're looking for affirmation. They're looking for significance. They're looking for purpose in life. And we think that when you come to this church or a church that preaches Jesus Christ, that you can find friends, find God, and then ultimately find life. We believe that. And I don't know if you're watching at home today, if you're watching online. I'm so glad that you're tuning in and checking with us and seeing what's happening here at Life Church. We are excited about the days ahead because you know what? A lot of people have lost sight of life. They looked for life, but they have lost sight of it. They're looking for friendship and they're looking for relationship, but they have lost it and they don't know where to find it. All of us in this room have experienced the emotion of loss. We have lost loved ones through death. We have misplaced an item. We've lost the car keys. Probably one of the worst losses that we ever experienced. We lose the remote. We've lost something. We've all experienced loss. And when we lose something and we realize that we have lost something, there is a sense of panic inside of us. In fact, what we do sometimes when we have lost something is we ask other people to help us find it. Now, let's just be honest. If somebody's asked you to help you find something, can you help? I lost my earring. I lost a necklace. I lost my keys. At least this is the secret thoughts that go inside of me. I hope I'm the one that finds it because you know what? I want to be the hero. I want to be the ones found it. And everybody, yay, Chris is awesome and amazing. And they're all, it's because it's all about me, right? All of us, because we feel important, we feel affirmed, and we get encouraged when we help somebody who's lost something, find it. And the incredible thing is, in life, a lot of people are looking for something, and they're all looking for the same thing. You and I are looking for the same thing. People watching online, they're looking for the same thing. We want to love somebody. We want to be loved by somebody. We want affirmation. We want significance. We want to feel important. We want to feel like we are connected to something greater than ourselves. So, incredibly, people search in all kinds of places to find those things. And the incredible thing is the more we look for it, the more elusive it seems to become. We look for the relationship that is going to end all of my frustrations. We look for that one person that's going to be the answer to all of the sadness and the loneliness of my life. If I just get this job, if I just get the finances, if I just get the next possession, if I get the position, if I get the career, whatever it might be, if I find it, then I will be satisfied. And maybe where you are this morning or where you have been in your past, you're finding or have found that you're still wanting. Hey, we're looking for love. The incredible thing is we start to look for love in all the wrong places, and it just doesn't work, does it? Now, Jesus kind of speaks into this whole thing. He has really this amazing verse that we're going to highlight for just a moment in Matthew chapter 10, verse number 39. Because all of us have really looked hard for something, but we don't find it, and it seems so elusive for us. And Jesus' answer that has the answer to us searching for something, wanting something, is found in Matthew chapter 10, verse 39. It's really kind of a paradox. It can be a confusing, challenging statement that he said. Listen to what he says. He said, look, if you cling to your life, isn't that what all of us want to do? We want to cling to life. We want to live as long as we possibly can. We want to fill our life with as much peace and love and joy and affirmation and acceptance as we possibly can. We'll cling to whatever we can to get that in our life. Jesus said, if you cling to your life like that, you're going to lose it. Because in the end, it's not fulfilling and it doesn't answer the need that's inside of you. On the other hand, if you give up your life for me, if you're willing to give up your life for me, then you'll find it. Now that challenges everything inside of us because you know what? We don't want to give up anything. We want to get stuff. We want to bring stuff in. We want to gain things into our life. We don't want to give up anything, and for sure we don't want to give up anything to Jesus. In fact, if we're going to give up anything to Jesus before we do, we think Jesus owes us an explanation as to why we should give it up. God, if you want me to submit to you with my finances, you better give me a good reason why. if you want me to surrender my marriage and start to manage my household and my family the way the Bible says I should, well, you better give me an answer. Jesus, if you want me to run my life with the kind of morals that are in the Bible, well, you need to give me an answer. Not that I'm unwilling, but I think you owe me an explanation as to why I should live this way, why I should submit my finances, why I should submit my heart, my marriage, my career, my ambitions, my goals, my will, all of it. I want to know why. You owe me an answer. And I think one of the reasons that we think God owes us an answer is because we've become very self-aware in the world that we live in. We understand DNA. We understand the human genome. We know how an airplane flies. We've explored planets beyond our own solar system. We've put a man on the moon, and we've got a space station up in the sky, and we can be on some foreign island far away and get out a phone out of our pocket and talk to Mama back in Williston. We've lost a sense of wonder about us because we kind of think we got life figured out. So God has kind of lost some wonder, I think, to us. And we also live in a democratic society where it's like, well, the only reason that God is because he won by a 51% majority. I mean, he just barely got in. And so, God, if I'm going to surrender to you, if I'm going to give up my life for you, you owe me an explanation. I want to know why. And really what it boils down to is we have pride inside of us. We think we best know how to order our life. We think we best know how to manage our finances. We think we know best on how to run a relationship, how to run a business, how to manage our life, manage our family, and manage our children. We think we know best, and so really it comes into a pride issue, and I'm not going to give up anything because either I don't like the answers I'm going to get from God, or I think I have better answers that I have from God. And the incredible thing about that is this. There is an encounter that you can have with God that you will never experience until you're willing to surrender. Until you're willing to say, you know what, I don't have to cling to this life anymore. God, I'll give it up for you. I'll lay it all out for you. And in that moment, when you do that, you will have an encounter that is your story. And you don't need an explanation from God, because when you have that story, it's your story. You've had an experience with God. You saw the miracle. You witnessed the miracle. You experienced the divine, and you don't need an explanation for that. Now it's your story, and you can tell it, but you'll never have that kind of encounter until you're unwilling to cling to your life and turn it over and give it to Jesus. So Jesus said, look, if you cling to your life, you're going to lose it. We think we need to cling to it because our life don't mean a thing if it ain't got the cling, right? Just want to see how many of you know about that commercial that was on 112 years ago. So anyway, but Jesus said, look, just turn it over to me. Now, there's an amazing story that we're going to go through. If you brought a Bible, I want you to go back to an Old Testament book called 2 Kings. 2 Kings, we're going to go to chapter 5. This is an amazing story that we could put ourselves in this story. There's a couple of characters in here especially that we could put ourselves in this story, and I'm going to challenge you. In fact, one of the characters in the story, we could just read, we could just gloss right over them, but they're a hero in the story, and I want to show you how you can be a hero as well. So we're going to go to 2 Kings chapter 5. This surrounds a guy named Naaman. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. It might be Naaman, but we'll say Naaman, okay? Because I'm Norwegian. And Norwegians, when things don't go right, we say Naaman. Yeah, so anyway, I like this story. So we're going back to 2 Kings. I'll read the story to you, and I'll explain things as we go along here a little bit. And really, the central character in this story, his name is Naaman. We're going to see in Naaman you and me. And how Naaman sought so hard to cling to his life, but he found it. And we want to help people find it. And in this story, Naaman found it. So here's how the story goes. We're in chapter 5, verse number 1. The king of Aram. Now Aram, this is the incredible thing about this story. Aram is a nation that borders Israel. And Naaman is not even a Jew. He's not even a God-fearing man. But we're going to see here in just a moment how that all changes. And so we are dealing with now a guy named Naaman who lives in a bordering nation to the nation of Israel. So the king of Aram had a great admiration for Naaman. And here's who Naaman was. He's the commander of the army. Because through him, the Lord, this is interesting, the Lord had given Aram great victories. Now there were skirmishes all the time between Aram and Israel. And Israel, they're so far away from God at this point in their history. And so sometimes God would send invading nations in to try to discipline them a little bit. And then invading nation comes in, and then Israel, I'm so sorry, oh God, please take us back. And they'd repent, and it would all start, and it would go back and forth. And Aram was one of the tools that God used frequently to get the attention of Israel. So this is Aram. And they had great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. Now put yourself in the place of Naaman. Leprosy is a death sentence. The logical end to the diagnosis of this disease is your flesh is going to rot and you're going to die. It would not matter how many accolades you got from the king. It wouldn't matter how many ticker tape parades you had because you had a great military battle. It wouldn't matter how many ribbons you could put on your chest. What matters is you have leprosy and it looks hopeless. You know, today there's people in Williston that have leprosy. And it's not a physical leprosy, it's a spiritual leprosy. Today, while you and I are in this building right here, today there's a shouting match going on in an apartment blocks from here between a man and a woman that have spiritual leprosy. It looks hopeless for them. They are saying words and they are doing actions one to another that are regrettable. Children are in their bedrooms today listening to this fight going on. They see the leprosy that their parents or live-ins don't even see. But they don't know that there's an answer. And do you know why you're here at Life Church today? Because somebody invited you at some point in time because they found it, they wanted you to find it, and they brought you here. And you're here today because you found it. You found hope. You found peace. You found answers. You found spiritual healing. You found emotional healing. You found encouragement. You found affirmation. You found love, and you found acceptance. You found it. You found it, but there's a lot of people that haven't found it yet. And so it was in the story that we're reading. Here's Naaman. Leprosy. All that matters is not having leprosy. The story goes on in verse 2. At this time, the Aramean raiders had invaded the land of Israel. One of those border skirmishes went on. So they run across the border into Israel. They had a skirmish over there. And among one of their captives, they're bringing captives back from Israel for slave labor back in Aram. One of those little captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. Don't know how old she is. She's just a little girl. She's taken captive. She's lost her parents. She's lost her national identity. She's lost her family. She's lost her personal significance. Now I am a slave to the commander of the army's wife. And so that's the story. Coincidentally, look at this story in verse number 3. One day, the little girl said to her mistress, she's talking to Naaman's wife, I wish my master would go see the prophet in Samaria. That would be in the nation of Israel. He would heal him of his leprosy. Out of this blue, this little girl who's now a slave in Naaman's house sees the suffering that's going on, sees the anguish, hears the conversations between Naaman and his wife, and says, you know what? If he would just go to Samaria, there's a prophet there, there's hope there. He could find it there. Well, what's Naaman got to lose? I mean, we don't know if there's any credibility in this little girl or not, but when you're desperate, you're desperate. So verse number 4 says, Naaman told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. The king responds in verse number 5, well, then go and visit the prophet, the king told him. I'll send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel. Not only did he send him a letter, look what else he sends. I love this. So Naaman, he started out, he's going on his way back to Israel, carrying gifts of 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. How many would welcome him to your house? Come on over. I'll buy. Don't worry about it, you know. He's on his way. Now, he's on his way with a military entourage. He's got a lot of people with him on horse, chariot, and they're all riding now back to the nation of Israel, looking for something, looking for an answer, looking for hope. And along with them was the 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. Clothing was hard to come by. It was difficult to make. It was very valuable. Coincidentally, in the last service, while I'm preaching, somebody had out their calculator and they were doing all the math and told me how much all of the gold and silver was worth. They didn't hear a word I preached. So anyway. Well, the story goes on in verse 6. The letter to the king of Israel said, I love this. This is to the king now, not to the prophet. This is to the king. So the king unfolds the letter. He gets the letter and he says, with this letter I present my servant Naaman, and I want you to heal him of his leprosy. Whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute, wait a minute. He wants me to heal him. Yeah, the story goes on. Verse 7, when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay. In other words, he is really mad. He is really mad. And he said, this man, he sends me this leper to heal. Am I God? Am I God that I can give or take away? I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me. In other words, this is a setup. He sent him here for me to heal him. There's no way I can heal the guy. This is just a setup. I'm going to send him back home the same way, and the king of Aram is going to go, see, he couldn't do anything. Let's go to war and fight. So he just thinks the whole thing is a setup. Well, news gets to the prophet. The prophet's name is Elisha. We don't know if he read this whole incident with the king on Facebook or if it was tweeted or what happened here, but he gets word of what's going on in the king's palace. Verse number 8, while Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent this message to the king. You kind of wonder how long all of this takes place. I mean, there's no texting going on here, right? So this takes a little more time than it does in our world today. But here's the message. He says, look, why are you so upset? He said, send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet in Israel. He's going to learn more than just that. Well, Naaman in verse 9 says, went with his horses and chariots, and he waited at the door of Elisha's house. I imagine Elisha kind of lived on the fringes. He's out in the country. He's out in the wilderness. And Naaman with his military entourage goes. And I imagine maybe Elisha's reading the paper, drinking a coffee, having devotions with God. I don't know. He hears this rumbling. It's a lot. I mean, there's just a lot of horses, and there's a lot of wheels coming down the road out here. And the amazing thing is that Elisha doesn't even lift a finger. He doesn't even get stirred up about this. He's got a messenger that works with him. So Elisha doesn't even go to the door. The messenger opens the door, and here's army tanks and armored personnel carriers and soldiers all over in the front yard. Okay. I imagine Elisha sent him, it says in verse 10, he sent this messenger to him with this message. Elisha wasn't even going to go because he didn't want credit for the healing. He wanted God to get all the credit. He didn't want any credit for it. So he sends the messenger out. And I imagine it's just kind of this meek and mild kind of a messenger, just kind of cracks the door open a little bit, looks at this huge army standing in the front yard and says, go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored and you will be healed of your leprosy. Shuts the door. It's like, I mean, like that's all the show there was. There just nothing happened after that. The door closes. The messenger's inside. Elisha's inside. Naaman's left outside. Go wash in the Jordan 7 times. Look at his response in verse 11. Naaman became angry and he stalked away. He said, I thought he was going to come out and meet me. I thought he'd wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord. Like I thought we were going to build a bonfire, roast marshmallows, have a big party, shake some stuff in the air and call on the name of God. And he'd wave his hand over. We'd have a big celebration. What? Go wash in the Jordan River. The Jordan River is cold, muddy. It's snow melt off one of the mountains in Israel. He's not too happy about any of this. Look at his response. Verse 12. Aren't the rivers of Damascus, the Abana, and the Pharpar better than any of the rivers of Israel? Well, apparently he thought so. He says, why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? And so Naaman turned and he went away in a rage. You know what's at stake here? You know what was really confronting Naaman? It wasn't the messenger. It wasn't even the message. It wasn't Elisha. You know what was confronting Naaman right here? His pride. He wanted to cling to his life. You see, I think God owes me an explanation. Why go wash in the Jordan River? I think the rivers back home are way better than that river. There's no way I'm going to submit to this. I'm not going to surrender to this. Do you know why people sometimes are so frustrated and angry in their life? Because God has been banging against the door of their heart, and they know what they need to do. They know what they need to change, but I'm not going to do it. And my stubborn will is going to win out because of something called pride. That's just people outside the church. That's not people inside the church, right? And that's what's really confronting Naaman. Fortunately for Naaman, as for many of us, there are wise people in his life as there are in ours sometimes. Verse 13 says, but his officers, they tried to reason with him. They said, sir, look, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? Like if you would have said, climb Mount Everest and find the spring, the sprig of a spring crocus and carry it in your teeth while climbing down the hill on your hand, you would have done that. You know why you would have done that? Because you would have looked like the hero in the story, like you did some great thing. You would have done that, wouldn't you? So look, shouldn't you certainly obey him when he says just simply, go wash and be cured? Like this is easy peasy lemon squeezy. I'm sure they said that. Yeah. Now, we don't know because we're reading the story here, and everything in the Bible you read just gets compressed for time. We don't know how long Naaman processed this information. Maybe that night they had a bonfire and had marshmallows after all. He prayed about stuff during. We don't know how much time it took, but we know that he responded because look at verse 14. So Naaman went to the Jordan River, and he dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him. And his skin became healthy as the skin of a young child. He was healed. Let's go back. Let's go to the Jordan River today. We're just kind of hiding behind some rocks and bushes and trees, okay, all of us that are here this morning, and we're watching Naaman do this. And we just read the story, and the story doesn't put all of the details in here for us because it can't. The Bible would be huge if it put all the details in there. But I'm just imagining, let's just imagine that Naaman, for one, is not Norwegian or German, okay? Let's just imagine that, okay? That maybe there's some emotional expressiveness about Naaman. Goes to the banks of the Jordan River. 1, he's probably just counting, comes up out of the water, looks at himself, nothing. 2, same thing. Steps down the 3rd time, the 4th time, same thing, nothing's going on. I'm just guessing. Maybe there was a gradual cleansing that took place. We don't know. But the 7th time, and I think God is dealing with his pride every time he steps in that water. It's like, oh, really? But the 7th time he comes out of the water. And when Naaman came out of the water, I heard it. I was there. Naaman went, cool, let's go home, guys. I think Naaman acted like a contestant on The Price is Right. I think when Naaman came out of the water, I found it. I found healing. I found it. I'm healed. I'm cured. I've got hope. I've got purpose. I've got value. I've got it all again. I think he was excited. I think he ran around to the officers, and they all saw him as this great commander. He's hugging and kissing them, and they're like, whoa, I think Naaman's excited and happy. Just like you, when you found it, when you came to faith in Jesus Christ, when suddenly the grass was greener and the sky was bluer and prettier people were all around you, you discovered life and hope and purpose. When you knew that your sins were forgiven and God made you a new person. Wow! I'm just saying. When you found it, you got excited. Excuse me, you were Norwegian. You went, yeah. Isn't God good? Yeah. And if you were a German, you went, that's about as expressive as you get, right? Naaman's excited. And look how Naaman responds in verse 15. Then Naaman and his entire party, I love his party. It was a party. They went back to find the man of God. I bet they did. And they stood before him, and Naaman said, look, this is huge. Now I know. Now I know. Now I know. This is my story. This is my personal experience. God doesn't owe me an explanation anymore. I obeyed. I gave up my life. I stopped clinging to my life. I gave it up for him. And now I know that there is a God in Israel. Now I know. And when you find Jesus Christ and it becomes your story, now you know. And you can tell other people about this story. Now you know. I found it. This isn't somebody else's story about what they found. This is my story. I found it. I found hope. I found peace. I found health. I found healing. I found encouragement. I found affirmation. I found significance. I found it. Now I know. And you know what? What if we would just give up and surrender to God? Not because we think God owes us an explanation. What if God is just God and God has our best interests in mind? What if God just knows what's best for you and you start to surrender Him? You've just decided, some of you decided, when God gives me enough information, I'll surrender to Him. But you will never have that kind of an encounter until you surrender to Him. When you lose your life, look, some of you, here's where your life is bumping up against God today. You're kind of a name in this, because even as I'm sharing this, you're kind of a name in here, because you know what? God is bumping up against your heart in some areas. And God has everything in your life except this one thing. For some of you, there's a call to ministry in your life. There's been a call to ministry in your life. But every time God starts talking about ministry, every time the preacher brings it up, every time you open up and you start reading His Word and He bumps against you, you just put up the walls because you're clinging to that part of your life because you think you know how you want to run your life. For others of you, you know what it is? It's a relationship. Your mama doesn't like him. Your mama doesn't like her. You know you have no business in this relationship, but it's safe. It's where you want to be. You think you know how to run things and I can change him and I can change her. You know that you should have no business there. And every time God deals with you, you're just resisting in that one place. For others of you, you know what? It's an issue of morality. It's an issue of morality. There's a stronghold. There's this thing in your life. And every time God talks to you, you just say, just leave that alone. I don't want to deal with it because you're afraid of what's on the other side. Others of you are trying to get out of a marriage you know that you need to be fully committed to. And every time you hear the Word of God, you hear somebody say something, you hear the Spirit of God speaking in your heart, you're trying to get out, but you know you need to stay in. For some of you, it's a career change. For some of you, it's in the area of money. And you know what? God just bumps up against us in so many different places, but we cling to it. And ultimately, we will end up losing it unless we just surrender it to Him. What if you just realized God has your best interests in mind? And when we give up our life, we will find it. The reason you're here today is because you found it. You found it, or you're looking for it, and that's why you're here today. Now, there's another person in the story that I want to highlight for just a moment, and then we're going to close, and we're going to take some time to pray today. Isn't the little girl in this story just amazing? She just, one day, her boss is, I don't know, getting a manicure. And the little girl has been hearing the conversations about the leprosy, and she knows it's almost like there's another person living in the house, and it's this disease. And so the little girl just simply says, what if he would go back to my country? There's a prophet there, and he would get healed. This little girl is the unsung hero in the story. She helped Naaman find it. Do you realize there's people in your life with spiritual leprosy, people that are just absolutely hopeless and have no hope? They're looking for it, they desire it, and they want it. They just have no idea where to find it. Be that little girl. Guys, just man up with me here a little bit. Be that girl. Just be that girl. All you have to do is point somebody to the direction of the answer. You don't have to have the answer. You just need to know the answer, and the answer is Jesus Christ. All you have to do is say, why don't you come to church? Why don't you attend a church? Why don't you let me introduce you to Jesus Christ? However you want to phrase it, just why don't you come? Why do you think I tell you all the time, read your Bible, pray, invite somebody to church. Read your Bible, pray, invite somebody to church. I want you to find it. I want you to help other people to find it. You have such incredible value. You come here week by week, Sunday by Sunday, you think, who am I? I'm just another little kind of a cog in the big wheel of this machine. You are like this little girl. When you just say to the cashier at the counter, you say, hey, I see what's going on in your life. I hear what's going on in your life. I've listened to your story. Each time I come through this line, let me tell you, I want to help you find it. Why don't you come to church with me on Sunday? This is for your family member. This is for your friends. This is for the people that you work with. You listen to their stories. They're looking for it. Listen to the stories. You have so much significance and so much value when you just say, hey, I know where you can find an answer to your needs. Whether or not they accept the invitation is totally up to them. Naaman did not have to go to Israel. The choice was his, but what did he have to lose? He is in a place of desperation, as are so many of the people that surround you in your life. We're building a building. Going to break ground in a couple of weeks. Then the big equipment comes here sometime in August and starts really doing the big stuff. And the reason we're building a building is so that we can help Williston find it, to find what you have found. We want to help people find life, to find hope, to find peace, to find healing, to find affirmation, to find marital fidelity, to find marital hope, to find relational hope, to find Jesus Christ ultimately. We want to help people find it. And so hence is the whole theme, but nobody will find it until they're willing to surrender themselves to Jesus Christ.